All right, let's dive right in. Welcome back to the classroom for today's History Masterclass. Today, we're going through a comprehensive explainer on the gripping story of the man who literally forged India's golden age. And we're talking about an emperor who ruled with a blood-stained sword in one hand and a musical Veena in the other. It's the epic saga of the real Chakravarti emperor, Samudragupta.
Here's the syllabus for today's lesson. We'll be hitting the mystery of the succession, the conquest of Aryavarta, the diplomacy of the South, the Ashvamedha and foreign relations, his dual life as a warrior and Veena player, and finally, Ramagupta's cowardly end.
So, picture this. You're standing in the tense, dead silence of Pataliputra's royal court. The aging Emperor Chandragupta I is looking out at his sons and his courtiers. Then, with tears of pride and probably a lot of anxiety, he completely bypasses his older sons. He actually defies the ancient law of primogeniture right there and declares Samudragupta as his rightful heir. It was a massive, bold move that put absolute merit over birthright. But, as we're going to see, it instantly sparked a political earthquake.
Starting off with Section 1, the mystery of the succession.
Before we really get into his conquests, let's get our historical timeline straight. The Gupta dynasty emerged out of a deeply fractured, post-Mauryan India around 240 AD under Sri Gupta. By the time Samudragupta actually succeeded his father, India was essentially this giant chessboard of warring states. He would go on to hold the throne for 45 years, passing away somewhere around 375 to 380 AD. But listen, actually securing that throne in the first place? Definitely not a walk in the park.
In fact, historians are still locked in a massive debate over the famous Kacha gold coins. Archaeologists dug up these coins belonging to a king named Kacha, but here's the catch. There is no King Kacha on the official Gupta family tree. So who is he? Well, about half the historians out there argue Kacha was an angry older brother who briefly seized the throne before Samudragupta took him out in a bloody civil war. The other half? They think Kacha was just Samudragupta's original personal name before he earned the title Samudragupta, which literally means protected by the ocean, after all his vast conquests. Either way, his rise to power was steeped in some serious drama.
Moving on to Section 2, the conquest of Aryavarta.
Now, Samudragupta was absolutely not a man of half measures. Talk about a power move. His court poet, Harisena, deliberately inscribed his patron's military triumphs directly on top of Emperor Ashoka's ancient peace pillar in Prayag. It was a massive political statement. He was boldly signaling that Ashoka's era of peaceful persuasion was over, and a new, aggressive era of unifying India by sheer force of arms had begun.
If you're taking notes for this lesson, you'll definitely want to write down this specific Sanskrit term regarding how he handled the north, prasab abharana. It translates to forcefully and violently uprooting the enemy. And I mean, he took that literally. He didn't just defeat the 9 kings of the north, including the powerful Naga rulers. He completely annihilated them and absorbed their lands directly into the Gupta Empire. Zero mercy, zero compromises.
Okay, let's look at Section 3. The diplomacy of the South. Here's where his absolute strategic genius kicks in. He knew that trying to rule the Deep South directly from his northern capital was just a logistical nightmare. So, he rolls out this incredible policy, and here's another mouthful for your vocabulary list, Grahana-Moksha-Anugraha. Basically, he defeated 12 southern kings, including Vishnugopa of Kanchi. He captured them, but then, brilliantly, he released them and gave them their thrones back. The catch, they became his fiercely loyal vassals. It's honestly a masterclass in long-distance empire building.
To secure the edges of this rapidly expanding empire, he handled the tribal republics and neighboring border states by forcing them into a strict protective buffer zone. They were allowed to exist, sure, but they had to play by 3 non-negotiable rules. 1. Pay all your taxes. 2. Obey all imperial orders. And 3. Personally show up at his court to bow down and pay tribute. Boom. He just built a defensive wall of fearful, loyal allies.
Which brings us to Section 4, Ashvamedha and Foreign Relations. You can really see how vast his sphere of international influence was. Distant foreign powers like the Shakas and Kushanas were so intimidated by his reputation that they offered personal service and even their daughters in marriage. And then you have the king of Sri Lanka, who sent an embassy just to ask permission to build a Buddhist monastery at Bodh Gaya. Even though Samudragupta was a very strict Vaishnavite Hindu, he generously allowed it, showing this really impressive level of diplomatic and religious tolerance.
To cement his status globally as a true Chakravarti, or universal ruler, he actually revived the ancient Ashvamedha yajna. This is a massive year-long horse sacrifice. You basically let a sacred white horse roam completely free for a year. If anyone stops it, it means war. If it comes back unchallenged, you are the undisputed king of kings. And trust me, nobody dared touch his horse. He even minted these spectacular gold coins just to commemorate the absolute flex of power.
Now for my favorite part, Section 5, the warrior and Veena player.
100. The Prayag Prashasti pillar proudly claims he had over 100 battle scars all over his body. We're talking scars from battle axes, arrows, spears, and swords. This wasn't some cushy general sitting safely in a tent on a hill. This was a fierce warrior leading his troops right from the absolute bloodiest front lines.
But here is where things get really fascinating. In stark contrast to a guy covered in 100 weapon scars, he proudly minted gold coins that showed him sitting on a royal couch, peacefully plucking away at a Veena, a stringed lute. He was literally known as Kaviraja, the king of poets. He adored music, he composed poetry, and he heavily patronized brilliant scholars like the Buddhist philosopher Vasubandhu. The man was as comfortable with a melody as he was with a massacre.
You know, the famous historian Vincent Smith actually dubbed him the Napoleon of India. But let's be real, Napoleon was a military genius who was ultimately defeated at Waterloo, and he was strictly a military and administrative guy. Samudragupta never lost a single battle in his entire life, plus he was a deeply accomplished artist and poet. So honestly, calling him the Napoleon of India kind of feels like a downgrade. Finally, we reach Section 6. Ramagupta's cowardly end.
Okay, let's look at what happened immediately after his reign. According to fragments of this ancient play called the Devi Chandra Guptam, Samudragupta was succeeded by his older son, Ramagupta. And Ramagupta was basically everything his father wasn't, incredibly weak and cowardly. When the Shaka king invaded, Ramagupta was defeated and literally agreed to a humiliating peace treaty where he promised to hand over his own wife, Queen Dhruva Devi, to the enemy king's camp. Seriously.
Looking at our timeline, this builds into pure cinematic history. When Ramagupta's younger brother, Chandragupta II, heard about this shameful surrender, he was absolutely furious. He disguised himself in the queen's garments, hid his best elite soldiers in women's palanquins, completely infiltrated the Shaka camp, and assassinated the enemy king. He then marched right back home, overthrew his cowardly brother, married the rescued queen, and rightfully claimed the throne.
For the longest time, everyone thought this wild story was just a made-up, fictional play. But then, archaeologists actually unearthed 4th century Jain statues in Durjanpur, with inscriptions explicitly naming Maharaja Dhiraja Ramagupta, along with copper coins bearing his name. It completely proved that this cowardly king really existed, which grounds this incredible tale of betrayal and heroism in actual historical reality. It just goes to show how incredibly fragile succession could be, even right in the middle of a golden age.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer on the Chakravarti emperor, the man who relentlessly built an empire with a sword but won hearts with a Veena, I want to leave you with one final provocative question for our masterclass. Who do you think had the truly greater reign? Was it the fiercely peaceful Ashoka or the undefeated artistic warrior Samudragupta? Think about it, debate it, and keep that historical curiosity alive. See you in the next lesson.